Alright guys, Quantum here with a quick update to our Strength Dex max damage build. I thought I'd give this a little update because we've found out a few new things as the game has progressed, and I just wanted to include them. These things include a complete respec of the character with some minor stat allocation point differences, and the inclusion of 2 new weapons to the arsenal, which actually proved to be very, very effective, and we're going to be seeing some PvP matches with those. Now this isn't obviously going to be a complete breakdown video because we've already done that in part 1, so this is kind of like a part 3, and I'm just outlining changes basically. So the first thing I want to note is our attributes here. So we're still soul level 120, still a part of the soul level 120 series for PvPing, but we've pumped up our Vigor back up to 38. And our endurance stayed the same. Our attunement is only 10 because we don't really use any spells, to be honest. It's mostly just for weapon skills at this point now for this build. Our vitality took a hit down to 19, and I'll explain why. Because if you look at our strength, we're actually at 40, and we're no longer using the Knight's Ring to pump up our strength. We're just straight up 40 strength and 37 dex with the Karthus Milk Ring for 40 dex. You'll notice that our intelligence and our faith are down to 9. If you watched the previous video, you know that we had those at 10 before. So we basically just removed about 4 or 5 points, I think, from vitality, and then 1 point from intelligence and 1 point from faith. And we put them into strength and vigor. And the reason for that is simply, instead of using the Knight's Ring, which gives us 5 strength, we were better off losing 5 vitality points, bringing our defense down just a little bit, in order to use the Ring of Steel protection, which gives us more defense, because we're never really going over our 70% load weight anyways. So having that much vitality in order to use the Knight's Ring for the strength wasn't worth it. It was more worth to upgrade the strength to 40 points and then use that ring slot for the Ring of Steel protection if we need it. So it frees up that ability and allows us to pretty much just squeeze out the little bit of extra damage and get a little bit more defense. So again, it's all about optimization, and that worked out best for us. So with that said, our setup, or our inclusion of new weapons, includes 2 basic things. The Black Knight Great Axe plus 5, a very high damage weapon. You can see here it does 695 normally, and it has the skill where you Warcry, and when you do that, you can see the damage bumps up by about, what is that, 68 damage or something like that, right? I think. So you gain 68 damage, and the weapon does 763 damage. Absolutely insane. And then when Warcry goes away, we go back down to 695. Now, what is unique about this is the R2 with this weapon. You know, it's the general upward swing, very good. But when you Warcry, your R2 becomes different. You do this kind of sweeping motion, and you can follow it up by doing that. So it is a very unique and very powerful weapon. It does a lot of damage, and when it hits consecutively with the 2-hit combo, it does a lot of damage. That is the first weapon in the arsenal. The second is probably one of the best smaller weapons in the game, just a normal curved sword, as you can see here, and we made the refined Karthus sword plus 10. This weapon does 438 damage with C scaling on both strength and dexterity, so we've kind of inched out marginally the most physical damage we can by putting our strength and our dex to 40. And the reason we use this weapon is because, let me turn on my HUD, just give me 1 second, guys. We can infuse this weapon with any kind of resin. So you can see the weapon does, like I said, 438, but when we infuse it, it does 533. So it gains 95 damage, and we can infuse it with lightning, magic, for the pale pine resin, dark human pine resin, or fire. So that beats out using flame weapon, which we were using before in our previous build, just because it gives us more variety, and we're able to buff. Like, one of the main advantages of a quality build is you're using the refined gem to infuse your weapon, so you can buff those things, and you get that variety, and you get just as much damage, and you get to allocate those stat points somewhere else. So again, all about optimization. This is the way that we've kind of tweaked the build, and the minor update that I gave to the build itself. So, and the resins, they do last a fair amount of time, and the good thing is you can also crack out these bundles mid-match. I don't really do it in any of our PvP fights because I don't need to, but look at that. It comes out super fast, and you can just pre-buff, or if your pre-buff runs out, you can just buff in the middle of a fight with the gold pine bundle. It doesn't last very long, but if you can get in 1 or 2 hits with that extra damage, it works out. So very, very good stuff. And finally, our armor, based on the weapon we're using, will change. So if we're using something that's like weighs almost 20, we're going to be using some lighter armor. As you can see here, we're at 69.4, just under the 70%, so we can roll fast, right? But if we use the Black Knight Great Axe +5, we're going to be using the lighter armor like the Undead Legion armor. The Black Hand armor is also decent as well. Just has a lot more slash protection than the Undead Legion armor, but obviously a lot less elemental, but it doesn't really matter. The physical defense is what really matters in it for the most part. If we use, one of the lighter weapons, especially like the refined Karthus sword here, we can switch over to some heavier, more poise heavy weapons to kind of poise through attacks. So we can go to the Dragon Scale armor or the Dragon Slayer armor. Those are both very good. As you can see, Dragon Slayer weighs 14, but it has over 10 absorption for every category. Very good. The Dragon Scale armor looks nice and also has a lot of physical defense and a good amount of poise as well. So good options there. And of course, Wolf Knight armor if we just want to look nice. But we switch over to the Alva Helm just because it has the most poise to weight and some decent defense as well. So it's an all-around great headpiece. If we need something lighter though, we can go to our old Sorcerer hat. If we're trying to style, we can go to the Lorien Helm. If we need a lot of elemental defense with lightweight, we can go to the Ragged Mask. Okay, hand pieces, more or less, we're going to stick with the Outrider Knight Gauntlets. The only thing I really see us switching to maybe would be the Sorcerer Gloves if we need a lot of elemental defense, but that's about it. And the leggings, again, it depends. Something that's really overlooked is the Archdeacon skirt. And if you look at this, it weighs 2.6, but it has some of the highest absorption for elemental defense in the game. And it also has an above 1 poise to weight ratio. So it's actually a very good lightweight armor piece if you're looking for something like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look the best, but it's very good nonetheless. The Alva leggings we have, again, just for the same reason we have the Alva headpiece, and it's because it gives us a lot of poise defense. So those are the changes. Carrying on a few more armors. Our ring slot, again, it frees up our 4th ring slot, so we can use kind of anything we want. We don't need to use the Knight's Ring anymore. We can use like the Wolf Ring +2 for the extra 20 poise. We can use some defense rings if we want. We can use like an obscuring ring for invading. It's up to you. So I like to use a Ring of Steel protection because it gives me, I think, 15% extra physical absorption, which is obviously really good. Less damage we take when we're doing trades and stuff, the better. So now that I've outlined the differences and the Black Knight Great Axe, let me just quickly break down the Karthus sword before we get into the actual PvP matches. So the reason this weapon is so good is obviously one thing is its length. For just a normal kind of quick weapon, the length is really good. The moveset, in general isn't that good except for one thing. The two-handed R1 comes out faster than any other weapon in the game, I believe. Or any barring daggers, but with other straight swords, hand axes, stuff like that. This weapon, I've been able to outmaneuver other people using like a dark sword and other long swords and stuff like that, straight swords, and just win out battles. And the damage it does, as you guys have seen, is quite significant, especially when you buff it. So hitting a 2-hit combo with this is likely going to take someone down to 50% or less. So it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely super quick. The rolling attack, it's going to do, not a lot of range, but if you can hit somebody with it, same with the running attack, not a lot of range. You may be able to catch a roll or something, but overall it's not too good. The running attack, mainly used to chase down people, I guess you could say. And if you catch them rolling, just try to throw it out there, maybe you catch them. Other than that, though, the weapon overall, with taking the whole moveset together, it's not very good, like I said, but the R1 is just ridiculously fast. Oh, and of course, if you knock someone down with a backstab or something, or you're just looking to chase somebody down, the L2 into R2 is actually decent to catch somebody, and you will see me utilize that in, I think, 1 or 2 matches. So that's the breakdown, guys. So let's get into some PvP matches and see how this thing performs.